What if I told you that the old coins hiding in your pocket change could be worth far more than their face value? What if a simple 1 penny from 1967, or an old $quarter, could unlock a story of history, scarcity and value that collectors around the world are searching for today? Stay with us as we uncover the secrets of these rare coins, the untold history behind them, and why they remain treasures in the world of numismatics. The story of the old $quarter and the 1 penny from 1967 begins in a time when coinage was more than just currency. It was a reflection of national identity, of economic strength, and of the culture of the people who used them. Every coin tells a story, and every minting year carries significance for collectors and historians alike. The 1967 penny is one such coin, minted during an era of transition and change in both design and composition, while the $quarter itself has a longer lineage that stretches back through decades of American history. The 1967 penny comes from a period when the United States Mint was working to stabilize coin production after years of shortages that were caused in part by the removal of silver from circulating coinage in 1965. This shortage had led to changes in how coins were struck and distributed. The penny, though made of copper at that time, still carried with it a strong cultural meaning as the smallest unit of American currency and yet one of the most frequently used coins. It featured the image of President Abraham Lincoln, a design introduced in 1909 to mark the centennial of his birth, and one that remained unchanged in its obverse portrait. Collectors value the 1967 penny not because it is made of precious metal, but because it represents a critical juncture in American coinage. The mid-1960s were years of experimentation and shifting policies. The government halted mint marks in 1965 and did not reintroduce them until 1968 as a way to discourage the hoarding of coins. So any coin produced in 1967, whether penny, nickel, dime, or quarter, lacks a mint mark, which makes this year stand out in American numismatic history. The absence of mint marks gives the 1967 penny a unique place in the collector world because it can only be distinguished by its year, not by its origin. The old $quarter, on the other hand, has a rich and layered story of its own. The Washington quarter was first introduced in 1932 to commemorate the bicentennial of George Washington's birth. Designed by John Flanagan, the coin became the standard design, and by the 1960s it had already been circulating for decades. However, in 1965, a monumental change occurred. The silver content that had defined American quarters was eliminated, replaced by a clad composition of copper and nickel. The $quarter from that period, including those minted in 1967, were no longer silver but base metal. Yet collectors still find great significance in these coins because of their connection to the broader story of American coinage reform. As the penny of 1967 and the $quarter of the same era circulated across the country, they passed through the hands of millions. They were exchanged in grocery stores, in gas stations, in schools, and in businesses large and small. They were symbols of everyday life. But beneath their surface lay deeper narrative stories about how a nation adapted to economic challenges, how coinage served both as art and as a necessity, and how small details such as mint marks and metal content can shift the value of a coin from ordinary change to a collector's item. To understand the 1967 penny in detail, we look first at its physical characteristics. It weighed 3.11 grams and was made of 95% copper and 5% zinc. Its diameter was 19 millimeters. The obverse carried the portrait of Lincoln designed by Victor David Brenner, whose initials VD had sparked controversy when first included in 1909. The reverse displayed the wheat ears design until 1958, and from 1959 onward featured the Lincoln Memorial designed by Frank Gasparo. In 1967, the Lincoln Memorial reverse was in use, and each coin showed the small details of the memorial, including, if viewed carefully, a tiny figure of Lincoln seated within the central statue. Collectors admire these details, and many focus on varieties or errors that make certain 1967 pennies far more valuable. One such area of interest lies in minting errors. The United States Mint in the 1960s produced billions of coins under pressure, and as a result, mistakes occurred. A double die, obverse or reverse, a clipped planchet, or a misstrike can transform an ordinary penny into a rare and highly desirable collectible. Reports of 1967 pennies with doubled lettering or unusual planchet errors make them especially valuable at auction, sometimes selling for hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Though the face value is 1 cent, the collector value can climb dramatically depending on rarity and condition. The quarter dollar of 1967 carries its own legacy, weighing 5.67 grams with a diameter of 24.3 millimeters. It was made of the new clad composition introduced in 1965, 2 layers of copper nickel bonded to a pure copper core. This transition from silver to clad coinage marked the end of an era for American money. Prior to 1965, quarters had been composed of 90% silver, and their melt value far exceeded face value. Once silver prices rose in the early 1960s, the government had no choice but to remove silver from circulation. Thus, coins like the 1967 quarter represent the early years of this new standard, while still retaining the iconic Washington portrait design decades earlier. Collectors often seek 1967 quarters not because of their metal content, but because of their historical context. They are part of the no mint mark years. They are tied to a moment of economic adjustment, and they sometimes appear with striking errors or varieties that give them added rarity, such as off-center strikes, die cracks, or double dies. These coins, while common in general circulation, still hold allure because of their role in the larger story of American monetary policy. When we talk about value, we must consider condition mint state coins, especially those graded highly by services such as PCGs or NGC, can bring significant premiums. A 1967 penny or quarter in average circulated condition may not be worth more than face value, but in gem uncirculated grades, they become highly collectible, sometimes fetching large sums, particularly if they display unique characteristics. The grading system, which ranges from poor to mint state 70, allows collectors to assign consistent value and understand where their coin fits in the scale of rarity and quality. Beyond value, the story of these coins connects to the human experience. Think about the millions of Americans in 1967 handling these coins, paying for newspapers, bus fares, or groceries. Each coin was a tool of daily survival, but also a silent witness to the events of its time. The year 1967 was marked by cultural and political upheaval, the Vietnam War protests, civil rights struggles, and a changing economy. In that sense, a coin from 1967 is more than metal. It is a piece of history carried through decades into the present. As collectors today look at the old quarter dollar or the 1 penny of 1967, they see more than small denominations. They see artifacts, each with potential to unlock knowledge about minting practices, design, evolution, and the economic pressures that shaped a nation. Coins are portals into the past, and holding one connects you directly to history. This is the professional history of the 1967 penny and the old quarter dollar, and in a 2-hour exploration, we dive deep into the economics of the era, the artistry of coin design, the minting challenges, the varieties and errors, the collector market, the grading standards, and the living legacy of these coins, which continue to fascinate collectors across the world.